I think I'm streaming. Hold on. So, welcome. I just got off of a phone call. I gotta change some stuff here. Get a little dimmer, I think, on the light. I was burning up. All right, welcome. And Mr. I see Santiago is online. I don't know if that's earlier or not. But what we are going to start doing for today at lunch is talking NEC 2023. And again, what my plan is we're going to develop the change document, right? So we're going to look at code changes for NEC 2023. It's something I got to pull. I'm pulling together my slides and my slide deck, all that good stuff. And my idea this morning was to do that live. And so that's what we are doing right now. Steve Roaming, not lunch yet. You know what, Steve? Take lunch now. So just put everything aside, forget about what you're doing, and take lunch, brother. All right, so what I am going to do is I'm copying my 2020 presentation. So I'll tell you how I did my presentation. I don't know if I can do this. Hold on. I don't know if I can do this. So I do me with... What if I do PowerPoint? All right, I'll move this over here. All right, so I'll tell you what I'm doing, Mr. Froming. I can't make it bigger. So I am copying my 2020 presentation slide decks. So here's what I'm doing. When I do my slide decks, I focus on creating a deck for each section of the National Electrical Code. And then what I can do is I can keep growing each of those sections every cycle. I can keep adding and modifying and say, okay, if nothing changes, then it's the 2023. It's 2023 code because nothing changed it. It was in the 2020 code and it's now in the 2023 code. So all of the material, and I'm going to change this to 2023. And you'll notice I have a 2023 presentation slide deck here. This is my first draft report. So this was my first draft report. I had, remember I did my Tom's Top 10. Ryan Jackson, hey, you're doing good, Ryan. Getting back in the groove. It is 2022. Unbefreaking-leable. I just can't believe it's 2022. And so I'm starting my development of the 2023 My Slide Deck, and I'm doing it virtually with everybody. So I'm looking forward to input. So remember, I had medium voltage. Medium voltage was a big one. This was our Eaton engagement. So this just talks about what panels we're on. Then I had my process overview. So these slides will still be good. In fact, I'm going to use this as my slide deck, my master slide deck, sort of highlight changes. So what I do, and I don't know what you do, Ryan, but if I look at I just copied my 2020 slide decks over, and I have basically a presentation for each section of the National Electrical Code. And you'll see some of these, the purpose, 2017, it didn't change in 2020, so that slide deck is still applicable. But my problem with some of these slide decks is that they're in an older format because I changed my style. and you know as well as I do, when you want to start changing things, copying slides from an older slide deck. So if I go to 90, if I go to this one, you'll see how this is in the smaller deck. Then I use the wider now, and I have a different background. I like the dark background with white letters. I think they show up better, especially for a room. When you have a large room, having a black background or a dark background, big white letters is best. I try to stay away from putting code language and whatnot. Hey, Gustavo Chavez, thanks for joining. I try to stay away from putting a bunch of text on there, and my modus operandi nowadays is to put less on the presentation. Hey, David Engelhardt, yes, the ET Zoners, good afternoon. I try to put less on my slide and more in the notes, because that is what I should be talking about. I don't want people reading the slides. If I have to put code language up, we can always go online, but so anyhow, that's sort of the challenge I have right now with my slide deck, is some of these older ones where haven't changed, and this was my style back in the day. And this was 2017, so that's 6 years ago, so or so, right? So I have to make some adjustments, because this scope and this 90.1 changed, and I believe it did. We're going to open that up. But in any case, I'll show everybody how to get to those things. So I have to come up with a format. So for right now, what I want to do is I'm going to go through Article 90. I'm going to start in Article 90. I'm going to show everybody how to go find what is the latest, what's out there, where to get that information. I'm going to open up, I'm going to open up my web browser, which is right here. I got my web browser. I'm going to go to NFPA.org 70. And I know the first draft report is accessible to everybody. I'm not sure what everybody can or cannot see on the second draft. See, I see public comments. Yeah, Ryan, that's humans can read or listen, but can't do both simultaneously. Rather, they listen to me than read my slides. That is exactly right, Ryan. So the beef of your content on the takeaways, in my opinion, this is what I do. I like to put that in the notes section. At least that's where I'm going nowadays. If I can throw a picture on or like you said, 2 or 3 words up there or one sentence, I can fill in the blanks. So, but filling in the blanks, and what I try to do is put some of that in the notes, so that if I'm printing out my PowerPoint, I can have the slide and I can have my key takeaway notes that I want to make sure that I verbally say. So when I'm in a presentation, I want to be, I know normally, and this, Ryan, is better than I do, and so does David Engelhardt and others. The more you do this, you'll remember what your key points are. But to start, you want to make sure you have the list of items on the key things that you want to make sure people remember at the end of that presentation, or after each slide, right? So first draft report, and then you have the view public comments. So I don't know, Ryan, do you have access on the view public comments? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if that's public or not. I don't know if that's public yet. So I'm going to open up a first draft report. Going to my sister's, then to the store. She's going to cook lunch when we get back. All right. I should say, okay, babe. And I'm going to say, okay, I'm live. All right. Okay. All right. So close. Here we go. I've sort of have identified the stuff that happened in the first draft, but I did not. I identified stuff that was sort of important to me and my company, Eaton, right? Okay, you can view comments. Okay, perfect. Oh yeah, they can just read the notes section in a later time too. Nice. Yeah. So Nick, that's the other thing. So what I could do is print my slides out almost like a book, where I have the slide at the top and I have my notes down below. I think it's perfect, in my opinion. It really makes life easier, and you could like you say, publish that. And what I plan to do, what I think I'm going to do is do a PDF and put that up on my website so that people can download it and take a look at it and give me comments on it. Because that's how we learn. That's how we make sure that we are catching everything. Because Ryan might have an opinion, Nick, you might have an opinion, and I know for sure Nihad El Sharif and David Engelhardt all have opinions. So and they would and we can help build this together. So I have the first draft and at least the committee review stage, the second the comments. And so what we'll do is some things that changed in the first draft may or may not have lasted into the second draft. So you sort of got to be a little careful whenever you're pulling together your material. So I'm putting the first draft over here. I have my second draft over here. Each of you can go online and look at exactly what I'm looking at. So I don't need to keep repeating that. And Steve, I know you are going to have an opinion as well. So, and you know what? I'm not. And so now I sort of lied this morning. I just went live on all of my platforms. This is the only session that I will go live on all my platforms because I don't want to miss anybody. Anybody who's watching this right now, this is going to be a YouTube only event. You need to get over to YouTube. You need to subscribe. You need to hit the bell. I am not going to do this on my LinkedIn, my Facebook, and there's a reason for that. Not because I want to drive people to my YouTube site. I want to capture the comments and I want to capture the notes and any comments on each of these sessions. I want your feedback on what I'm talking about here. I want you to tell me if I said, hey, this is a no-brainer, I'm not even going to include it in my presentation, then I need you guys to say, oh, no, this is important. Or if I have an interpretation of something and you don't agree with it, I need to know that. I want to know where the issues are. So that's why I'm focusing everything in on one channel, and primarily, again, because I want all of my comments, I want to capture those. I want to create some dialogue around this as part of these videos. So the first thing to recognize, and Steve, I think you had the question earlier, where do you see these changes? Go to the NFPA's website. Subscribe, and yes, Nick, and subscribe and hit the notification bell. That's right. So Steve had a question earlier when I went on this morning just to let everybody know, and your question was, how do you see what the changes are? And I'm telling you, Steve, it's not very simple. And the reason, that's why I put, you have first draft. If you go to NFPA's website, you go to NFPA's website, and what I do is I go nfpa.org/70. That gets me straight to the National Electrical Code, because many people don't recognize that, every NFPA document has a number. We call it the National Electrical Code, but it's really NFPA 70. So you go to 70 and you have these buttons right here. You have current and prior editions. So if you want access to see the 2020 code for free, you can select this edition and you can view free access. You have the free access button here. You can subscribe to NFPA link. And I'm telling you what, I just became an NFPA link advocate. I would say you need to subscribe to it. I learned from the crew at NFPA that I can put it on my phone. I can go straight to my phone and I can access the code book. I can access it online. I can search it. I can create tabs and all that good stuff. So that's really good. Not good for this discussion because we're talking about the next cycle, but I'm telling you, if you want to, from an existing, this is my sales pitch, which I don't get any money out of it. But I would say I was not a big fan of NFPA link before I became and started to use it. So just saying. I'm out of coffee. I love my Christmas mug. I'm probably going to use this all year round. All right. So then what you do, Steve, is you go to next edition. not new edition. That's a music group. Next edition. And then you'll see the next edition is the 2023 cycle, and it's the annual 2022 NEC revision cycle. And you have a first draft, and then you'll have once they publish the second draft. Right now, you can just see the comments. We're balloting. We voted. We can ballot. We're balloting those, all of those changes, and this thing keeps. Oh, that's Val, and we're going to ballot those, and that was due yesterday, and now NFPA is going to do their magic. Oh yeah, email notifications. I will do that. That is a good point. I will do that on my. See, I'm going to get better at using my website reference materials. But you got to be subscribers either to my YouTube channel, hit the bell, or follow me. Subscribe on my at thomasdimitrovich.com, and I will send out notifications. But once we publish the second draft, which will be what is past ballot. Now, just be mindful here, and this is why you got to be careful when you're developing your 2023 code change materials. If you're an educator out there, you can look at the first draft and see the changes, but some of those may not make it through the second draft. So you've got to look at first draft, and you've got to look at the second draft to see what actually did change. Kenny Rogers? What's that, Joe? Mr. Ballard? What's the Kenny Rogers reference? I don't know. I don't get it. Anyway. So what changed in the first draft may not have changed in the second draft. So you've got to look at the first draft, because when you look at the second draft, if what was changed in the first draft, the new edition, okay, the new edition, next edition, not new edition. So if you look at what changed in the, say for example, I'll give you an example. In the first draft, Article 90, here's what changed. Is this first draft? That is a first draft report. I thought, and this is, okay, yeah, first draft report. Public inputs, first revisions. So these are all of the first revisions, and you'll notice, what's this one? This is the second stage. Okay, so we'll put this over here. First draft, they changed the introduction. Article 90 changed. 90.1 is no longer purpose, it is scope of the NEC, because that follows the style manual, right? So in the first wave of changes, we have a scope statement now for the NEC 90.1, which says this article covers use and application, arrangement and enforcement of this code. It also covers the expression of mandatory, permissive, and non-mandatory text, provides guidance on the examination of equipment and on wiring, planning, and specifies the use and expression of measurements. And you'll say, well, what happened to purpose, the practical safeguarding? Well, that is in 90.2 now. So 90.2, which was scope, is now use and application, and that's where you have practical safeguard, adequacy, and installations covered, and installations not covered. So the numbering changed. Now, if I look at the second revision, the changes, you won't notice anything highlighted in 90.1 or 90.2. So if you just went to the second revision, or the second revision, you wouldn't know that 90.1 changed, because it changed in the first draft. It became code. It wasn't commented on, so it wasn't modified in the second draft. That's why making a code change document is challenging if you do it like I'm doing it right now. And personally, what I would do I would say, hey, there's a scope. I'd probably say, hey, in my educational program, I would begin probably saying, hey, look, there's now a scope for the NEC. Let's see, wait, scope. This article covers, there was not a scope in the before, so that's new. So I would probably put the new scope, and then I would say, hey, should you Mr. Solomon, thanks for joining. What condition? My condition was in. So what I would do in my educational program is I would say, look, we now have a scope for the National Electrical Code. I'd probably state it up there and say, here's the new scope. Make sure everybody understands what the scope is. And I would cover things like what happened here. This is style manual stuff. There were a lot of style manual changes in the 2023 code. The adequacy didn't change. Practical safeguarding did not change. What is covered and what is not covered didn't change. The titles, the numbers changed. So my general overview from a code change perspective is to tell everybody, look, you've got to be careful. If you have any materials that reference a specific section in the National Electrical Code, you may have to change those reference numbers because stuff moved. Why did things move? Because the style manual dictates that it should have moved. Did the intent change? No. You know what? Hold on. I knew you were going to ask that. I got to get my code book. 90.2. 90.2 of the National Electrical Code. I'm looking at the 2020 version now. I'm going to see if the words are the same. 90.2 says scope. Yeah, but here's the thing. What did not what they added was the paragraph right in the beginning says the article covers use and application. And what they did, David, and it's the scope for Article 90 that was added, which per the style manual, every article needs a scope. So if you look at 200.1 has a scope. This article provides requirements for the following, gives you those requirements. Sort of tells you what the article is about. So now Article 90 has a scope. And to your point, 90.2 was titled scope, which is supposed to be 90.1 per the style manual. So they moved that up there. And there was no lead-in paragraph that basically gave you the scope of Article 90. Now we know that the article covers the use and application, arrangement, and enforcement of the code. It covers the expression of mandatory, permissive, and non-mandatory text, provides guidance on the examination of equipment and on wiring planning, and specifies the use and expression of measurements. So now I can read that first opening paragraph and say, I know what Article 90 is about. Now, what they did was they said that right now, what's covered and not covered is a part of 90.2, which is use and application. Yeah. Let's go to YouTube. Hold on. Yeah. Up. There we go. All right. So I just have to remove something real quick. Remove. All right. So you have 90.2, which is use and application, which covers the practical safeguarding, the adequacy, what is covered and what is not covered. So they sort of reorganized. They added 90.1, which is scope. And so my lesson here is the style manual. Where do you find the style manual? Let's talk about that. What is the style manual? If you go to, it's not going to be under next edition, or is it? I think it's under the technical committee. Guidelines, committee scope. Where is the NFPA style manual? Standards development process. There's the TIA. Tentative standards development process. Technical committee info. Regulations, policies, and forms. Let's take a look at that one. I'm looking for the style manual. Standards and development process. Public inputs, public comments, technical meetings, standard council actions, regulations and policies, guide for conducting regulations, NFPA standards, temporary technical meeting convention rules, forms, new products, resources, standards, list of NFPA, glossary of terms, manual of style. There it is, NEC style manual. I don't know how I found it. I don't know what I clicked on, but you saw it. You can go rewind and follow the same steps. And I clicked on that, and it took me to current and prior condition, but up standards council decisions, erratas, additional information, NEC style manual. So there it is, current and prior editions. Go to that, scroll down, and you'll see additional information right after the erratas, and you'll see NEC style manual. You can hit the download button, and you can open that up. And this is the 2020 National Electrical Code style manual. Now, you'll notice this will tell you the format. This will tell you all the code panel members had to get this. We had to look at our changes in regard to this document to make sure that we have the right sections and all this other good stuff. They made a lot of changes to this document. And I'm telling you, from a code use, like a codeology or whatever it is you want to call it, proper to understand how the code is laid out, all this good stuff. This is a great resource for you. Great resource. Download it, print it out, put it in, put a copy in the bathroom, put a copy in your living room, put a copy in the truck, put a copy by your favorite chair. Give your dog a copy because they'll carry it around and they'll give it to you whenever you need it. Yes, Mr. Solomon, you can buy one of those books, but there's a lot of free stuff on the NFPA website. I think they have to modify a membership entry question to the Facebook group ECD1 in 2023. I'm not sure what that means. So National Electrical Code, there's the way the book is laid out. You have general, all this other good stuff. Standards of Electrical 70E, articles. Okay, so here you go. Articles are chapter subdivisions, right? So they tell you about the articles, what the parts are. So you have some articles are laid out in part 1, 2, 3, and 4, etc. And then you have your subdividing sections. And what I'm looking for, and it tells you how the list formats are supposed to be. And then you have your subdivisions. Your part 1 is general. This tells you what an article is, what a part is, what a section is. Third level subdivision, second level subdivision. So you'll know when you're talking to a code. Hey, Daryl Hill in the house. I know, Daryl, you would think they would make that easier to find, but they don't. But in any case, you'll know a code, I don't know, code geek or whatever you want to call us, when they say first level subdivision or second level subdivision or parent text, this is right out of this document right here. I ask for the section of the NEC scope. Scopes, each article. So here it is, current content of document subdivisions. Each article shall have a scope, which shall be the first section of the article. Where an article has multiple parts, the scope shall be the first section in part 1. So that's what's happening here in Article 90. They're following the style manual, and that's not new. That's been there. It's just, it got some love, right? So 90.1 in previous editions is purpose. Now, moving forward, 90.1 is scope, and it follows the rules of 2.2.1 of the NEC style manual. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. And here's another change. Definitions of terms used in the requirements of the document shall only be located in Article 100, and it shall not be subdivided. That's another big change. So part of a 2023 educational material, in my opinion, should include a section, a discussion around the style manual and its influence on the NEC. So I don't even have a document opened yet, but here's what I'm going to do. I am going to 2023 presentation. Oh, I have a PowerPoint opened up already. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to file, save as, and I'm going to call this NEC 2023. And what's today's date? 2022-01-06. So we're going to maintain our process. Changes in the NEC that are style manual driven seem to automatically pass, but the style manual doesn't seem to receive public review. Not sure how that is a consensus. The style manual. That's a good question, Ryan. How is the style manual changed? I'm gonna have to think about that. So let's do this. We're gonna create home, new slide, layout, questions. How is the style manual updated? Who updates? Public input. Oh, and that's a good question. Yeah, so if you disagree with moving the definitions to Article 100, how do you voice that opinion? You do it on my YouTube channel. And then we will have a group virtual hug as you cry. And maybe if it's at 5 o'clock or later, I will go over to this cabinet over here, get some Ardbeg or some Macallan or maybe some Whistle Pig. If it's a really bad one, Whistle Pig. There you go. That would be deserving of that one, Ryan. A good shot of Whistle Pig. Anyway, I don't know. I will find out, though. I'll find out that process. Rick, I don't know if you can submit a public input for the style manual. Maybe, Rick, you can. Maybe if you put a public input to say we need to move this over, then maybe that feedback goes back to the core lane committee, and maybe the core lane committee could take the task group that developed that style manual and maybe make a change there. I don't know. I'm going to find out about that one. All right, so NEC 2023, this is no longer a first draft report. This is NEC 2023 code changes, right? And I'm going to take the Eaton Focus out. This is just NEC 2023, and I would say as part of the overview, actually, we're going to call this style manual. So I think I have to do style manual. Influenced changes. Something like that. And one of those is definitions moving. First of all, what is the style manual? Where to get it? We just did that. How it's changed. Right? Since the Quarterly Committee is in charge of the document, it would be under their purview. Yeah, I agree with you, Rick. It would be. But somehow they would have to get the notification that Ryan doesn't like it. And maybe if they got like 1,000 public inputs that says, no, move these things back, maybe that would be enough for the Core Lane Committee to say, we need to modify the style manual. But our avenue to make changes in this document is the public input and public comment phase. That's our avenue. we can't make a public input to the style manual. I don't believe it goes through a public review and debate. But anyway, I would say your only course of action, Ryan, is to either join me for a scotch or a good bourbon and we cry together, or you make a public input and influence others to do the same. Definitions are moving, sections moving. 90.1 is a good example, right? So 90.1 is created. Language is created for the scope of Article 90, and we moved some things around, 90.2 and whatnot. A major down. So Susan, you're saying that it's going to be a major downfall for the field person. I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. My opinion, I'm on the fence on it. I don't have druthers, but I think one of the biggest problems that we have is people forget about chapters 1 through 4. You know, if I'm working on swimming pools, I'm in 555. It doesn't mean I forget about chapters 1 through 4. So maybe putting definitions in chapter 1 gets these people to start thinking about what's in 1 through 4, because that stuff's important and people don't do it. I don't know why. Anyway, I don't have druthers in I don't have a dog in the fight. I value your opinion, though. If you think that it's going to impact field personnel, it could. But all the more reason we need to get people to understand this change. So Ryan Jackson and Susan, the IAEI, the IEC, the IBEW, NECA, other influencers in the industry have to keep reminding everybody that you go to Article 100, just like every other NFPA document. All their definitions are in Article 100. I think the NEC is the only one that doesn't do it that way. You got to we got to remind them and let them know, get over to Article 100 for any of the definitions. And now my issue, I think one of my concerns is there are a lot of definitions. And what we'll do when we get to Article 100 in this, as we go through, there are some definitions there are some terms that we use multiple times in the NEC and they're defined differently. So I think that could cause some confusion. But for those that are great, the code greats, it comes easier, but I think it hampers our everyday user. It very well could, Susan. For those that are code greats, it comes easier, but I think it hampers our everyday user. It might. And we've got Ireland in the house. Here in the CR, we use the 2014 Spanish edition, and this discussion of newest version inputs and changes is priceless. Excellent. Glad you are joining us. I agree with Susan. The definition for bus bar will now be in 100 and apply only to ceiling grid systems in 393. That won't help 99.9%. So the definition for bus bar. Let's take a look in Article 100. Bus bar. Where is bus bar? Article 100. Article 100, bus bar. It is not in Article 100 right now, Ryan. So if I go to 393, it is defined in bus bar. So, Ryan, your point of saying that it's going to be the definition for bus bar will now be in Article 100 and apply only to ceiling grid systems in 393. It is already that way. It only applies to Article 393, low voltage suspended ceiling power distribution systems. So that didn't change at all, because 393.2 definition says the definitions in this section shall apply only within this article. So if you're using the definition of bus bar anywhere else in the NEC, you would be misusing the NEC. And the fact that it brought that to light, that it won't help 99.9%, maybe somebody needs to make a change to the term bus bar so that it does apply to everywhere we use the term bus bar. I think that's part of the issue, is that you never had any definition of bus bar in the National Electrical Code outside of 393. It's still there. It's in there in 2020, and it's now in 2023, but it only applies to 393, and now it's a problem. It wasn't a problem in the 2020 code. You never had that comment before, but now you do, and maybe it's because it changed. And maybe that change is highlighting problems that have existed that need to be addressed. That might be a good thing. So in Article 100, they're going to say it only applies to Article 393. That's one of the things that they're going to put in that definition. So if that's a problem, if you sit down and say, why don't we have a definition that is generic? Bus bar is a bus bar is a bus bar. And if low voltage suspended ceiling distribution systems is using a term bus bar, maybe they shouldn't be using that term. Maybe it should be something different, because bus bar is in a panel board. It's in a switchboard. There might be other uses of the term bus bar in the NEC. And if we do use it, then, and if we start using it more often, then it deserves to be open to the entire book. But I'm just saying that maybe it's going to open up the discussion just like it is now. Right? So if you sat down and said, look, it's in Article 100 and it should apply, you have to look at, where do you use the term bus bar in the NEC? If it's only used in 393, then you don't have any other problem, because it's only used in 393. The moment that term is used anywhere else in the code, then you got to look at how it's used and does it align with the definition of bus bar in Article 100. If it doesn't, then you need to change that definition in Article 100 to align with the use, the new use of it, and make sure that you don't conflict with the use of it in 393. And I think those are the things that this is going to drive, these discussions. Because, I mean, if you define a term in here, it should be used generically. I personally don't like the fact that you have such a generic term of bus bar that only applies to Article 393. Bus bar is used everywhere. So, I don't know. Don't you love this stuff? I love it. Anyway, so what I think in just starting this discussion, well, yeah, Al Teresi, sometimes words have two meanings. Yeah, I would agree with that. And Al, you're coming in on LinkedIn, buddy. I need you to get over to YouTube, because I will not be doing these anymore after today. In fact, this evening at 5 o'clock, I'm going to go live again, and we're going to continue this discussion, because I'm going to be working on my document. And it's only going to be on YouTube. Just saying. And you're right, Al. Sometimes words have two meanings, or three, depending upon how they're used. So anyway, 90.3. So style manual influence change. So I need to have a section in here that talks about the style manual, what it is, that the definitions are moving, the sections are moving. 90.1 is a good example. What else? Okay. All right. So, I'm clicking on the wrong screen. Okay, so that makes sense. All right, so let's take a look at Article 90 again. Where's my? Hold on. I got to be careful what I'm clicking here. I don't want to show something that I'm not supposed to show, because I might have something up. I'm not sure yet as to what is publicly available from NFPA and what is not publicly available from NFPA. So I know the style manual is, so here's the, and I'm going to put a link to the style manual, putting a link out there to the style manual. There you go. So my YouTubers and my Facebook people, because I'm streaming on both of those, probably not my LinkedIn people. There's a link to the, nope, that's not going to work. That is not going to work because that is the downloaded version. Open link in new window, save link, copy link address. All right, here it is. Control V. That should be, I'm going to delete this other one, remove, because you're not going to be able to access my hard drive, but you will access the next one, the other one that just posted. So take a look at, that's the link to the style manual that we were just talking about. And it's a PDF Adobe file. So you should be able to open that one. And that's all I have to say about that. So you have the style manual now, and you sort of found how to navigate to it. It's a great document to read and understand. So public inputs. So 90.1, the only thing I would say in 90.1 scope is the change to the actual scope. So it's a new scope. It's a new scope for 90.1. It's not for the entire NEC. It's just 90.1. So I think it's a notable, and what I would use that for is a springboard to talk about the style manual and the influence of the style manual on the NEC in a generic term. So I would say it's almost like a global change discussion. Capiche? Makes sense? And it did not change. It didn't go away in the second draft. Now, there was changes to E in 90.2. 90.2. Well, this is interesting. 90.2, relation to other international standards. They made a second revision that says the requirement of this code addresses the fundamental principles of protection for safety contained in Section 131 of the International Electrotechnical Commission Standard. And they changed the title, Low Voltage Electrical Installation. So Part 1. So they're specifically calling out Part 1. Now, this is an interesting one. So E, 90.2E, relation to other international standards. Is specifically referencing an IEC standard, an International Electrotechnical Commission standard, 60364-1. And I believe that's currently in, that is in 90.2 already, right? Yeah, it's 90.1C in the 2020 code. And what they did was they changed the title to address the title. And they're referencing specifically Part 1, fundamental principles. So I don't know that it's a change worth talking about, in my opinion. I wouldn't talk about it. And it was a correlating committee note that they need to address the specific title of that document. So big deal, right? And T's possible we could we still could have some surprises from the second draft. Yeah. So and that was my point earlier, Susan, that the first draft is one thing. Second draft is some things that may have changed in the first draft get reversed in the second draft. Some things that are new in the second draft, that maybe if something was proposed in the first draft didn't pass, but it passed in the second draft. So you got to look at both. And right now the ballots are in, as you know, because you're code panel, you're chair. So you know that the public the recirculated ballots have been submitted, and now NFPA is working on the second draft, second revision. But yeah, second draft. So, and everything that we do is going to be relying on that, but I don't believe the scope is going to change at all. That's pretty solid. 90.3 didn't change. 90.3 did not change. 90.4 did change. And it wasn't commented on in the second draft, so it changed in the first draft. 90.4, remember, is enforcement. So notice what I've got. I've got the 2020 code book sitting on my desk. I have the first draft report, and I've got the public comments in, which, to Susan points, not R. Kelly is in the house. Yo, dude, what's up? So I have the second draft report up here, or the public comments, which is not the second draft yet. To Susan's point, things may change. So I've got 90.4 did change. And it looks like, what did they change? They took out... Looks like they... Now, what you do is... So let's do this. I'm going to give you some... When you look at the first draft report, you're going to have 90.4 enforcement. You're going to see that all of this text was changed. You're going to see that this sentence was removed. The interpretations, the specific requirements, they created a B, and a C. That looks new, right? So what is this, 90.4 enforcement? Yeah. So they created 3 first-level subdivisions. We know that because the first-level subdivision, A, B, and C are first-level subdivisions. How do we know that? The style manual. Download it, read it. And they put in a D, new products, construction, or materials. And this is when it says details, FR 8401, that's a ballotable detail. So they balloted that separately, I believe. So FR 8378. Now, if you want to see what the change was and what the panel statement was, you click on that. There is the change. And there's a ballotable detail, so there's that detail. And here's the committee statement. The editorial revision places the items in list format and complies with the style manual. Again, a style manual influence change. 2.1.5.1, improving clarity and promoting usability. And here is the public input that drove that. It was submitted by Mr. Hilbert. And he said, this public input only seeks to add clarity, usability, and to bring the section more in line with the regulations governing committee projects by including separate titled subdivisions. There are no technical changes to the requirements. So now, would I include this in my change document? Would you include this in your change document? There's no intent of a technical change. It's adding clarity. They have application, interpretation, and specific requirements, and then new products, constructions, or materials. The code may require new products, instructions, or materials that are not yet available at the time of this code. So that's all already in 90.4. They just put it in a list format. So this code is intended for the suitability for mandatory application of government bodies. Is that in here? This code is intended to be sued for mandatory application by government bodies. So they didn't delete that. They just moved it into a first level subdivision. New so I don't feel the need to do that, to make this as a point of discussion. I don't even think I did 90.4. I'm gonna look at my 2020 code. Presentation 90.4. Oh, I do have enforcement 2017. This is what I had to say about enforcement for the 17 code, which didn't change in the 20 code. I said, enforced by the authority having jurisdiction. The authority having jurisdiction for enforcement of the code has a responsibility for making the interpretation of the rules. That's still in there. Article 100 defines the HJ. So that's still in there, and we can look to see if that changed. 90.4 enforcement, further reading, AHJ and FEB. Enforcement. That's all I had to say there. So I didn't have much. That wasn't earth-shattering, but I do have to update that slide. I don't have the code language in here, so all of that's still accurate. All that is still accurate. Yeah, because they took this sentence and they moved it down. So technically nothing changed. I am not going to update my slide deck. And this is another good reason for not putting code language in your slide deck. If you put the language in, now you've got a problem. If you just say, I'm talking 90.4 enforcement, who enforces what? If you have the meat of it in your slide deck, then 90.4 intent did not change. And then whittle it down to 1,500 slides or so to create my 8, 4, and 2 hour print. Yeah, and you know, Ryan, I have slides on 90.4, which I just showed, but if you don't put the language on there, then you don't have to change your slides because the intent did not change. They moved language around. If you said 90.4A says this or 90.4B says this, now you've got to make some changes to your slides. But if you don't, you could simply put one slide in and say the 2023 cycle made no technical changes, but reorganized 90.4. That's all. I mean, why go into the details? That's my thought process. Why go into the details of what happened in 90.4 when the intent didn't change? The enforcement of the code didn't change. It was reorganized for clarity. I don't even know if you need to say that, in my opinion. Is it a major change? No. I mean, did I travel 8 hours to go see a program to hear that? No. In my opinion, that's my opinion. So, all right. So 90.4 made some changes in the first draft, and it wasn't reversed in the second draft. So that language is solid. There weren't any comments made in the second draft. There is nothing at risk. The changes in 90.4 are solid. Those are going into the code. 90.5. 90.5 made a slight change. 90.5 is mandatory rules, permissive rules, and explanatory material. So there is a first revision, 8379, that added some text or an informative annex. So it says explanatory materials such as references to other standards, references to related sections of the code, or information related to the code rule is included in this code in the form of informational notes or informative annex or an informative annex. Now you remember there is informative annexes in the back. There are annexes, and this is where you'll find the ampacities. You'll find some tables back there. You have Annex B is ampacities, C is tables. Now, this is all explanatory materials. So these are informational, they're not enforceable. So Annex tables that give you trade sizes. Annex C is are all of your trade sizes for different dimensions for conductors. You have these are all information. They're not enforceable. I could, if I had data from a manufacturer of the product I'm using, I could use that data. I don't have to use the data that's in these tables. But these give you some guidance. So they're information only. And they also added, unless the standard reference includes a date, the reference is to be considered as the latest edition of the standard. This is a good one, 90.5. All right, so I think 90.5, I'm putting a note here on 90.1. All right, so on my 90.1, I'm saying springboard for discussion of style manual impact, right? So that's my springboard for style manual. But 90 dot, what did I say, 4? 90.4 is still, time is it? Oh, it's 102. Not 90.4, it's 90.5, 90.5C. And after this, I'm going to 90.5. 90.5 is titled Mandatory Rules, Permissive Rules, and Explicit. Did that change? 90.5. Mandatory rules, permissive rules. Okay, so I'm going to put a note in here about 90.5C. Whoa. Reference 90.5C. Charlie, change about additions of references. So what they're saying here is that when you see a reference, say it says NFPA 70E is in an informational note or whatever. If they don't put the date, it's the latest version. If they do put a date, it's a specific version. It says, unless the standard reference includes a date, the reference is to be considered as the latest edition of the standard. So here's the dangerous part of that. From a code panel member perspective, just updating dates without looking at the document, if, for example, you call out part 5 of a reference material in an informational note, and I'll have to look to see if part 5 is no longer there in the latest edition, then you can't reference just the latest edition. You can if you change the content of your informational note to not reference a specific part or section of that document, and just say, go see this document for more information on this, and let the user of the code figure out what section to reference. Or you need to update your section numbers or your exact specific reference materials. And we saw that in 90 dot, because they made a change. It's in 90 dot, I'm looking for it. I am looking for it. We just saw a requirement that referenced where's it at? It's another document. Application, new provisions, explanatory material, got it. I remember seeing it, and I can't remember where it's at. There it is. 90.1, which is purpose, which is now 90.2, use and application, and relation to other international standards. That's what it was. So here's where you've got to be careful. So the requirements in this code address the fundamental principles of protection for safety contained in section 131 of International Electrotechnical Commission Standard 60364-1. They don't have a date, so it's the latest version. But here's the thing. It says, it gives the title, Low Voltage Electrical Installations, but then it specifically calls out Part 1, Fundamental Principles, Assessment of General Characteristics and Definitions. What if in the next version they change the title, or there's no part 1, it becomes part 2? This committee will have to recognize that. And this is, I think, panel 1 covers Article 90. So when you reference another document and a specific part in that document, and you don't put a date next to it, that means the latest version. So that means if this is the 2023 code and you're a state that just adopted the 2023 and it's 2027, and that document changed, part 1 may not exist anymore. But based on the style manual, because you didn't put a date next to the Electrotechnical Commission standard 60364, and because of the requirements in 90.5, 90.4, not 90.4, 90.5, where's it at? 90.3, 90.2, 90.3, 90.4. Where was it? Oh, I'm in the wrong section. 90.4. Because of the change in 5C, where it says unless the standard reference includes a date, it's the latest edition of the standard. You may look at the latest edition of the standard and say, I can't find part 1, for example. That's one example. Because part 1 changed or it no longer exists. So this is one of those style manual things, and I know this was controversial and hard, and it was a hard discussion, but I think that's, in my opinion, there should be a date next to every reference. That's where my head's at. Because that language, you don't know, especially if you reference a specific part in a document. And we just know the National Electrical Code just changed. 90.1 changed the title of it, changed from purpose to scope. And the contents of 90.1 in the 2020 moved to 90.2. And so they made a lot of changes. Now, if I had another document that referenced the National Electrical Code and it didn't have a specific date, all of those references are wrong. And in 90.3, 90.2E, relation to other international standards, we're referencing a specific part 1, fundamental principles assessment of general characteristics definitions. Heaven forbid if that part 1 is removed or changed in 60364-1. You don't know the date. You don't know the document, the reference document that they're referencing here. So Ryan, I'm on you with that one. I think that the style manual needs to look at that again, in my opinion. If you're going to reference them, if you're going to make a reference, put the freaking date on it. That's where my head's at. Okay. That is that, and it is. I've gone for an hour and 9 minutes. I am going to log off, and we're going to take this back up. Ryan, I agree with you. Removing that date's a major issue. So, but I'm going to continue this at 5 o'clock. So I have to. I've got to think about a format for my presentation. I really do. I haven't thought about it yet. So I have. Man, I've got so many different formats and templates. So the goal, I think your best bet, and Ryan, you may know this even better. I don't know how you do this, but I think you need to get a good template and stick with it. So I need to change my template, and I might work on that before this afternoon. What I'm going to do, my live sessions are going to be walking through the code language, identifying what is important, what is not, and then putting some notes in for each of the sections on what are the key points I want to point out. Like on this 90.5, additions or references, discuss possible challenges, and what to look out for. Right? So I think it's notable. You have about 5,000 graphics, and you have a template. Graphics aren't a template, so I'm assuming graphics are the images. And the template, though, is how you lay out each slide. Unless you make a picture for each slide. That's different. So anyway, I'm going to work on my template a little bit as we move along. I'm going to just capture. I'm going to capture the changes and some important pieces. So I think 90.1 is a good one. That'll springboard into the style manual discussion, help people understand what the style manual is, where to get it, all that good stuff. 90.5 is a good, helps us understand the references, possible challenges, what to look out for with regard to that date. And again, it's another discussion around the style manual. All right. So a slow start, but you see my process. I got to have the first draft, second draft open, and I've got to have the code book. So stay the course. Identical. All right. Time to eat lunch. At least I'm going to have some lunch and continue working. I think I have a 1:30 meeting. If I'm not mistaken. I think I have a 1:30 meeting. Let's double check. I have a 1:30 IEEE Electrical Safety Workshop meeting. That's going to be fun. Got to prep for that one. Thanks for joining in for this. We're going to work on the code changes, so let's do it together. I'm going to use this first one to create the playlist on my YouTube channel. This will only be streamed this afternoon, only to YouTube. I'm not going to all my other platforms. I want to focus the comments and the feedback. Greg McMurphy, thank you. Adding dates to all references makes sense because the alternative is making cross-references so generic that is yeah, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yeah, Nikolai Tesla has a 1:30 meeting too. Have a good day, everybody. I appreciate you guys dialing in. And Greg for joining us, and not R. Kelly for joining us. Susan, thank you for joining, and Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to everybody. Hope you had great holidays, and I hope everything was safe. So Steve, thank you for joining as well. Hopefully now I'm going to teach you how to fish. You can go out there and figure out those changes. So have a good afternoon. I'll see you all at 5 o'clock Eastern. And if you're Steve Fromming, I will see you at 4 o'clock your time, Central, because you are Wisconsin. Cheesehead. All right, guys. Thank you. Remember, take care, stay safe, and please stay healthy. Article 90 is a nightmare. Oh, I'm still.